Israel faces yet another political deadlock after the third round of elections in less than a year. Israelis can't help but wonder, are we headed to fourth elections? Well, joining us now with all of the possible coalition scenarios this time around is columnist for Newsweek and editor of HistoryCentral.com, Marc Schulman. All right, Marc, so let's first talk about these laws. This law to prevent more than 2 terms for the Israeli prime minister and to also prevent Netanyahu from forming a government.
Right, so there's 2 laws that actually. There's the one the Israel Beitenu wants, which is it should be in effect immediately. So that means that someone who's under indictment cannot form a government, and that would affect the ability of Netanyahu right now to even try. And also, of course, 2 terms. He's already served, I don't know, 5 terms at this point. So that would immediately...
4.
Well, 4 plus the one earlier one, I think. So it depends on how you look at it.
Okay, that's true. It does depend how you look
at it. So in any case, so that would immediately take effect. Blue and White is claiming they want it only for the next election, which would also limit the fact that if there's a 4th election, Netanyahu wouldn't be able to run.
Right, so the idea is we're not trying to undermine you now, but down the line, yes.
Well, we're setting in place. I mean, there's a question whether he can form the government anyway. There's legal challenges to that question to begin with, because it's a gray area of Israeli law altogether. So this is a way of clarifying it. What is clear from the statement, of course, though, is the fact that in order to do that, Lieberman is going to have to recommend Gantz to form the government.
Right, but even if he does that, Gantz says that he won't sit with a joint Arab list party.
First of all, step 1 will be to elect a new speaker of the Knesset, because in order to do the things that Lieberman wants, you need a new speaker of the Knesset, not from Likud. So you'll have a speaker of the Knesset from Blue and White, and the person who will be in charge of arranging the Knesset will be someone from Blue and White. And minimally, if we're in another 4 months of who knows what of another election, we'll have an active Knesset in the meantime.
But there is something to be said about Netanyahu's statement that, the people voted for the right. So,
well, wait a second. You can only make that
my question is, this is my question, okay? Is there a possibility that Rivlin would say, okay, there's obviously a lot of issues surrounding Netanyahu specifically, but if we would I'm going to give the chance to somebody within Likud to...
He clearly could do that because Likud is the largest party. There's no question.
But there has to be legislation around that,
no, he can just do that. Rivlin has the power to do it. He's never exercised that power, but he certainly has it, and he can say he's under indictment. I don't feel it's appropriate to give him the responsibility. But let's keep in mind that other statement you made, because you're quoting basically Netanyahu's line. The reality is 62 members of the Knesset oppose Netanyahu and oppose Netanyahu continuing to be the prime minister. And while the first election people could say, well, they voted for Avigdor Lieberman, they thought he was pro-Netanyahu. Lieberman made it very clear in this election that he was against Netanyahu continuing. So there's no question it's 62. That's democracy. I'm sorry, you have to count the Arabs as part of the democracy. So 62 Knesset members are in favor of Netanyahu not continuing.
Right, but I mean, there was a larger majority. Okay, I understand what you're saying.
Look, Netanyahu clearly had a great comeback. There are more members of Likud this time than there was last time.
I mean, he did win. Likud won 36 seats.
He won 36 seats, opposed to 33. But on the other hand, the last 2 times, Blue and White had more seats than Likud, and that didn't mean that everyone said, well, Blue and White has to become the new government. So the reality is 62 is 62. It's more.
Well, or the question here is whether or not, I mean,
we have a lot
Blue
of
and White,
we have a lot of other scenarios.
Let's talk about the other scenarios.
We have other scenarios.
Right, exactly.
So we could go back once again and try to get a coalition government, rotation agreement. That's certainly one of the possibilities. I don't think there's much chance. The numbers stay at 58. There isn't much of a chance of enough people going from Likud, going from Blue and White to Likud at this point. It's 1 they could have gotten. 2.
It's only 3
seats. 3 is
quite
a number, because if once you go over to the other side, you lose all sorts of things. You can't be a Knesset member. There are all sorts of reasons legally.
Yeah, but the question is there somebody who's willing to defect in the name of not going to 4th election?
No, there's no one who's willing to do that. No one's going to give up their career for that purpose. Not a chance of that happening. And why not the other way? Why not Likudniks going the other direction? It's like it's all on one side. It doesn't have to be on one side.
All right. Well, here's my final question for you, because we're running out of time. So give us the last possible scenario. Is a unity government an option?
It's an option. Especially one possibility is if Gantz goes first and it says Netanyahu will become prime minister after 2 years, and at that point he'll have finished his legal cases, and either he'll be clean, in that case no problem in being prime minister, or he'll be in jail, I guess no problem with that issue if he loses the cases. So that's clearly a possibility, and of course we really have a possibility of a 4th election, believe it or not. We can be sitting here 5 months from now and discussing the next election.
Well, I hope that that's not the case. All right, Marc, thank you so much for joining us today.